What if the first being wasn't a man of flesh and blood, but a being made of stars, earth, fire, and soul? Across cultures and millennia, a mysterious figure appears. A giant, luminous man whose body births the world. His bones become mountains, his breath the wind, his mind the sky. He is Ymir. He is Adam Kadmon. He is Purusha. He is the cosmic man, the mythic archetype hidden in the depths of our collective unconscious. A symbol not only of where we come from, but of who we are destined to become. More than a mythical ancestor, the cosmic man is a universal map of the soul, an inner image that appears across religions, philosophies, and psychological systems. He represents unity, wholeness, and the merging of opposites, heaven and earth, spirit and matter, self and world. In every version of this archetype, from Jewish mysticism to Norse mythology to Hindu cosmology, we find the same deep pattern: a being whose body gives rise to creation, whose death leads to new life, and whose image calls us to awaken the divine within ourselves. In Jungian psychology, the cosmic man represents the self and is central to the process of individuation, which is the journey of becoming the full, unique person you are meant to be. According to Carl Jung, the self is the integration of both conscious and unconscious parts of a person, forming the entire psyche. This happens through individuation, a process that brings different parts of our personality together. Individuation's purpose is to lead to a sense of wholeness in a person. Wholeness means being able to fulfill your true purpose and calling. It allows you to be your real self in the world, instead of just wearing a mask or playing a role. When we let go of our ego and accept ourselves, we can also accept others more fully. Individuation is a connection with your own true self and, at the same time, with humanity, since we are all part of a bigger whole. The cosmic man's path of individuation is often linked to creation, but can also happen after death. This archetype blends both masculine and feminine qualities, representing a balance between opposites, and can be seen as hermaphroditic. In stories, the cosmic man often takes the form of a giant figure that goes through individuation, which might include elements like being torn apart, having plant or animal traits, or showing a four-part structure. The cosmic man carries traces of an ancient identity. Shared ideas and emotions create a collective unconscious connection between humans, plants, animals, and the elements. After death, parts of his body transform into elements of the universe itself. In Norse mythology, Ymir, also known as Orgelmir by the giants, was the first of the frost giants and the ancestor of all Jötnar, the giants. Ymir was formed from the drops of water that appeared when the ice of Niflheim met the warmth of Muspelheim. He is considered the original being who started the race of giants. Snorri Sturluson, an Icelandic historian, poet, and politician from the 12th and 13th centuries, combined different ancient texts, along with his own interpretations, to explain Ymir's role in the creation of the Norse world. The main texts that describe this story include the great poem Völuspá, the question and answer poem Grimnismal, and Völuspá itself. Völuspá begins with the Norse story of how the current universe came into being. Old stories I recall from long ago. I still remember the ancient giants. Was it the time when Ymir existed? No sun, no cool waves, no sand were there. Earth had not been, nor heaven above, only an empty void, and no grass anywhere. According to these ancient poems, in the very beginning, there was nothing but the ice of Niflheim in the north and the fire of Muspelheim in the south. Between them lay a vast empty space called Ginnungagap, the great void that existed before the universe came into being. Ymir, the first living creature, was formed from the drops of poison that dripped from the icy rivers of Elivagar into the vast and lifeless void of Ginnungagap. It is said that as Ymir slept, the sweat under his arms gave birth to two more giants, one male and one female. Additionally, One of his legs mated with the other, and together they created a third giant. These three were the ancestors of the frost giants. They were cared for by the giant cow named Udhumla, who, like Ymir, had been created from the melting ice in Ginnungagap. Udhumla survived by licking salty ice blocks, and as she licked, she uncovered the shape of a man, who became Buri, the ancestor of the gods and grandfather of Odin. Buri had a son named Bur, and Bur had 3 sons, Vili, Ve, and Odin. The 3 brothers, Vili, Ve, and Odin, eventually killed the giant Ymir. From Ymir's body, a great flood poured out, destroying all the frost giants. The brothers then used Ymir's lifeless body to build the world. They carried his body to the center of Ginnungagap, where they ground his flesh into dirt. The maggots that appeared in his flesh turned into dwarfs, who now live beneath the earth. His bones became mountains, and his teeth transformed into rocks and pebbles. Odin scattered Ymir's brains into the sky, creating the clouds, and took sparks from Muspelheim to form the sun, moon, and stars. To support Ymir's skull and create the heavens, the gods placed 4 dwarfs. The gods also created the first humans, Ask from an ash tree, and Embla from an elm tree. Odin breathed life into them. Vili gave them wisdom, and Ve gave them sight and hearing. These humans were placed in a world the gods made from Ymir's eyebrows, which was called Midgard, a safe place for humans to live. Ymir's existence sparked the creation of the world by providing the materials and elements the gods needed to shape the universe. In Jewish mysticism, particularly in Kabbalah, a mystical school of thought and practice, the cosmic man is known as Adam Kadmon, which means the heavenly man or the primordial man. It's important to note that Adam Kadmon is not the same as the physical first man, Adam Harishon. The name Adam Kadmon combines 2 words that point to its complex nature. On one hand, Adam refers to a created being, while Kadmon refers to a form of ancient divine existence. Kabbalah is a set of spiritual teachings that explore the connection between the eternal, unchanging God, called Ein Sof, meaning the infinite, and the mortal, finite world that God created. These teachings are the foundation of mystical interpretations within Judaism. According to Kabbalah, before creation began, only God's infinite light existed. The first step of creation was when God withdrew some of this light to create an empty space. Then a ray of divine light entered this void, and the image of Adam Kadmon appeared within it. In this first stage, Adam Kadmon appeared as 10 concentric circles radiating from the divine light. These circles formed a shape, which was the anthropomorphic figure of Adam Kadmon, representing a realm filled with infinite divine light, but without vessels to contain it. Kabbalah uses human-like symbols to describe God's actions and creations, but Adam Kadmon represents pure, uncontained divine light, an image of potential rather than a fixed form. In the human soul, Adam Kadmon corresponds to the Yechida, which represents the collective essence of the soul, or the world soul. The term heavenly man was first used by Philo, a philosopher. In Philo's view, the heavenly man, created in the image of God, is not made of earthly, corruptible material like the earthly man, who is described as a lump of clay. The heavenly man is seen as a perfect reflection of the divine, beyond gender and physical form, existing as pure thought and intelligence. In contrast, the earthly man, created later by God, is a physical being with earthly qualities and can be sensed with the body. Adam Kadmon, also known as the soul of Adam Harishon, the first human, is seen as the highest essence of humanity, containing within it all future souls. Adam Kadmon is not considered a real physical person. According to mystics, Adam Kadmon represents the connection between all of creation, the mark of God, and the very first creation. The heavenly man symbolizes what humanity will become once we reach the highest level of soul awareness, representing both the original perfect state and our ultimate goal. The corpus hermeticum, a collection of 17 Greek texts traditionally linked to the legendary figure Hermes Trismegistus, who is a blend of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth, tells a story of creation. In this story, the all-encompassing mind shows Hermes Trismegistus a vision of how the universe came to be. At the beginning, there was infinite and boundless light, from which arose a deep darkness that became the first material, or primordial matter. From this initial matter, the four elements, fire, air, water, and earth, emerged. At this stage, all matter existed in a state of chaos. It was simply moist, shapeless, and disordered. But then, the all-encompassing mind, which was the infinite light and the driving force behind all things, spoke a word, logos, into the chaos. Logos, which is seen as the son of the Father God, then organized this chaotic matter, shaping it into the cosmos and creating Earth along with the seven rulers: the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Hermes was told that these seven rulers guide the fates of humans. Once matter was formed, the all-encompassing mind created humans, initially androgynous, in its own image, and entrusted them with the world. When the human soul saw its own reflection in the waters of earth, it fell in love with it and wished to remain in the moist, material world where it saw its image. Its will brought this desire into reality, causing it to descend through the seven heavens, gathering qualities from each of the seven planets along the way. Finally, it reached Earth, where it became fully encased in matter, taking human form and becoming subject to the cycles and changes of life. From the moment humans were created, they became limited by their own nature, such as gender and the need for sleep. Because of this, humans lost the ability to speak the divine word, logos, and became a dual being, mortal in body, but immortal in spirit. They gained power over all things, yet remained bound by fate. In this state, humans would experience endless cycles of reincarnation until they gained true knowledge of themselves and their divine origin. Only when they reached this wisdom could their souls be freed from the physical body, escape the cycle of rebirth, and return to unity with God. In some ways, the story of creation in Hermetic tradition is similar to the tale of Adam and Eve and their fall from the Garden of Eden. In both stories, the fall occurs because of selfish pride, which is considered the first sin. The Hermetic idea of the soul needing to break free from the body is similar to the Gnostic belief that the soul is trapped in the physical world, and also parallels the Hindu idea that reincarnation continues until a person reaches moksha, or spiritual freedom. According to the legend, God gave Hermes Trismegistus the responsibility of teaching humanity how to achieve liberation and reunite with the divine through knowledge, or gnosis. This would help people realize their heavenly origins and remember the divine connection they had forgotten. One famous teaching of Hermes Trismegistus is the principle, as above, so below, which highlights how humans are connected to the universe and reminds them of their divine beginnings. The idea of microcosm and macrocosm suggests that humans are a small reflection of the larger universe, and the universe itself is a living, human-like being. This concept means that by understanding human nature, we can learn about the cosmos and vice versa. One important idea connected to this view is that the universe as a whole could be alive and have a mind or soul, known as the world soul. This idea was proposed by the philosopher Plato in his Timaeus. Many philosophers, including the Stoics and those influenced by them, believed that this cosmic mind or soul was divine. This led to the belief that the human mind or soul was also of divine nature. The Hermetic saying, as above, so below, shows how the larger universe, the macrocosm, and the smaller world, the microcosm, are connected. What happens in one realm is reflected in the other. This can also be said as within, so without, meaning that what we feel and experience inside ourselves will show up in our outer world. This is a universal law, meaning that no matter where we are, this principle applies. If we are happy on the inside, our outer world will reflect that happiness. This law applies to all aspects of life, whether material, mental, or spiritual. This principle is true because everything in the universe comes from the same source. The same rules and characteristics that shape one part of the universe apply to all things in different forms. Just like how understanding the principles of geometry allows scientists to measure the movement of distant stars, knowing this principle helps us understand how what we know can connect to what we don't yet understand. The philosopher Plotinus, from the Neoplatonist tradition, thought of the cosmos and humans as being part of the same continuous existence. He believed that the soul and body, spiritual and physical, are deeply connected, not separate. This idea of blending spirit and matter applies to all living beings. In Plotinus's view, everything is both spiritual and material, and each being expresses these aspects in different ways. Plotinus also introduced the idea of the world soul, which he believed was the source of individual souls, as well as the material world. Although he saw the physical world as being less perfect, he still believed it was ultimately divine because it came from the same source as everything else. According to him, beauty and goodness help us see the connection between the divine and the material world. This idea is similar to Hindu beliefs, which say that the goal of life is to reach a level of consciousness where we can understand the relationship between the divine, Purusha, and humans. In Hinduism, the highest state of consciousness is called Moksha. Hindus believe that once someone reaches Moksha, they will be able to reunite with the cosmic consciousness, or the soul of the universe. The idea of a Redeemer God and the first human is an ancient one. We don't know exactly how old it is. The Son, representing the revealed God, offers himself as a sacrifice in the form of a human to either create the world or save it from evil. This idea can be traced back to Purusha in Indian philosophy. In the early Vedic texts, Purusha was a cosmic being whose self-sacrifice led to the creation of life. As the creator, Purusha gave himself up to bring the world into existence, dissolving within the very creation he made. This is one of the many creation stories discussed in the Vedas. The idea of Purusha is deeply explored in various Upanishads and is also called Paramatman and Brahman. Over time, this idea became more abstract and was no longer seen as a person, much like the concept of the Jewish heavenly man, Adam Kadmon. The Upanishads describe Purusha as splendid and without a body, unborn both inside and outside, without breath or mind, higher than the highest element. From him comes life and mind. He is the soul of all living things. In these texts, Purusha refers to the pure essence of the self and the spirit. It is an eternal, unchanging principle that is everywhere and has no form. In Samkhya philosophy, Purusha is the immovable cosmic principle, pure consciousness that is separate from everything else. It is independent, unchanging, and can't be experienced through the mind or senses. It is beyond words or explanations, remaining pure and non-judgmental consciousness. Both the Samkhya and Yoga philosophies teach that to achieve moksha, or freedom from the cycle of birth and rebirth, one must realize the true nature of Purusha. Yoga philosophy teaches that there are two ultimate realities that interact to explain all of our experiences and the universe: Purusha, the spirit, and Prakriti, the matter. The universe is seen as a mix of what we can perceive as material reality and what is invisible, non-material, the laws and principles of nature. Material reality includes everything that can change, that has changed, and that is affected by cause and effect. Universal principle, or Purusha, is the unchanging, uncaused essence behind it all. In yoga, Purusha is the true self we should strive to understand. It is our real being, the immortal part of us that represents our self-awareness. By recognizing our inner Purusha, we go beyond the limits of time, space, karma, birth, and death, and reach lasting happiness. In Hinduism, it is believed that all living beings are linked by a shared divine essence. This concept of Purusha is very similar to Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious. Jung believed that the collective unconscious is a universal mental space that holds the memories, myths, and symbols common to all humans. This shared unconscious binds us all together by holding patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that affect every person. Jung also said that in dreams, fantasies, and other special mental states, we may suddenly see ancient, mythological symbols and images. These might appear because of influences, traditions, or emotions working on us, or they might emerge without any obvious cause. These universal symbols, which Jung called archetypes, are part of the deep unconscious and can't be seen as personal experiences. Together, they form what is known as the collective unconscious. Jung argued that the collective unconscious shows that our personal consciousness is not a blank slate. It is shaped by inherited ideas and is heavily influenced by things beyond our control, including the environment. The collective unconscious is a profound concept that touches upon the very core of human existence. It encompasses the psychic life of our ancestors, stretching all the way back to the very beginnings of humanity. This part of the psyche is not just a personal archive of memories or experiences. It is a vast reservoir of shared human history, containing the accumulated wisdom, fears, dreams, and instincts that have been passed down through generations. It's as if we are all connected by an invisible thread that links us not only to each other, but to all those who have come before us. In this sense, the collective unconscious acts as the matrix of all conscious psychic occurrences. It shapes our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors, often in ways that we're not even aware of. But here's the catch. Because the collective unconscious is so deeply ingrained within us, it often exerts a powerful influence on our conscious minds. This influence can be so strong that it compromises our ability to act freely and independently. It continuously urges us to revert to familiar, old patterns of thought and behavior, to walk down the same worn paths of our ancestors without realizing it. This pull is not simply a quirk of the human mind. It is an essential part of how we are wired, a part of our psychic inheritance that we cannot escape. The collective unconscious is not something we develop individually or through personal experience. Instead, it is something we inherit. It is a shared treasure trove of universal symbols, archetypes, and patterns that have existed long before our individual lives began. These archetypes are like seeds planted deep within our unconscious, waiting to sprout into consciousness over time. They are pre-existent forms, the building blocks of our inner worlds. The fascinating thing about these archetypes is that they can only become conscious indirectly. They are not things we create or invent, but rather patterns that we discover within ourselves. When they do emerge, they help shape our understanding of the world and provide us with the psychic frameworks through which we interpret our experiences. These archetypes manifest in dreams, myths, and even the characters we meet in our everyday lives, helping us make sense of our place in the world. Now, let's turn our attention to Purusha, a concept from Hindu philosophy that offers a deeper lens through which to understand the nature of consciousness. Purusha refers to the single, unified consciousness that binds all of existence together. It is the essence of being that transcends the many individual forms and experiences we encounter in the material world. In moments of deep, meditative states, the sages and wise men of the East are said to have realized the presence of Purusha. This experience of oneness is often described as a profound, trance-like state in which the boundaries of the self dissolve and the individual becomes aware of the interconnectedness of all things. It is from this state of deep consciousness that insights of great spiritual significance are unearthed. These insights are not intellectual or conceptual in nature, but rather come from a place of direct knowing, an intuitive grasp of universal truths that transcend individual experience. Jung's work, particularly his ideas about the collective unconscious, was profoundly influenced by this ancient wisdom from the East. He was an avid reader of Eastern spiritual texts, including the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and the Yoga Sutras, and he saw in these teachings a profound insight into the nature of the human psyche. In his view, Eastern philosophy offered a complementary perspective to Western psychological theories, one that could enrich our understanding of the mind and its deeper, often hidden aspects. Jung saw the human psyche as a vast, dynamic landscape where conscious and unconscious elements were constantly in dialogue, much like the teachings in Hinduism that speak of the interplay between the material and spiritual realms. The idea of the collective unconscious, for instance, aligns closely with the Eastern notion of an all-encompassing, shared consciousness, a vast field of wisdom that transcends individual lives and connects all beings. Jung believed that by tapping into this deeper layer of the psyche, individuals could gain access to universal truths and insights that would help them lead more fulfilling and integrated lives. In this way, the integration of Eastern spiritual concepts into his work allowed Jung to offer a more holistic, expansive view of the human experience, one that acknowledged both the personal and collective dimensions of our consciousness. Jung had a unique perspective on the concepts of Moksha and Nirvana, which are central to many Indian spiritual traditions like Buddhism and Vedanta. While these traditions teach that an individual can achieve complete liberation from the personal ego through a profound realization of oneness with the universe, Jung took issue with this idea. His objection was rooted in his belief that the complete negation of the personal ego is inherently impossible. From a Jungian perspective, the ego is not just a temporary feature of human consciousness, but an essential part of our psychological makeup. Without the ego, there would be no self to experience life. And as Jung would argue, the result would be a kind of psychic death, where the individual no longer has the ability to engage with the world in a meaningful way. For Jung, the ego is necessary for navigating the world and achieving psychological wholeness. On this point, Jung's philosophical outlook takes a distinctly Western turn. He was deeply influenced by the idea of the subjective nature of reality. Our perceptions are always colored by our individual experiences and mental frameworks, while Eastern traditions such as Hinduism and Buddhism posit that we can transcend the personal ego entirely. Jung argued that doing so would strip us of the ability to function as individuals within the world. His argument seems to prioritize a more grounded, reasoned approach to human experience, suggesting that consciousness, in its supreme form, must still include the ego in some way. He warned against an over-reliance on reason or scientific thought as the only ways of knowing, yet, in denying the possibility of a state of being completely free of the personal ego, he seemed to rely on a logical distinction between subjective experience and objective reality. Jung did, however, acknowledge that there is a higher state of consciousness, one that transcends the functions of the personal ego. This is where his view aligns with Eastern ideas, particularly the concept of Purusha in Hinduism, which represents the ultimate, unchanging consciousness that transcends the individual self. Jung believed that such a state does exist, a state beyond the confines of ego and personal identity. But unlike the Eastern mystics, he did not believe that this state of supreme consciousness was devoid of the ego entirely. While the Eastern traditions assert that in this supreme state, we experience the world without the distorting influence of the personal ego, Jung proposed that the ego could still exist within this higher consciousness, albeit in a different form. For Jung, the ultimate consciousness may transcend the narrow perspective of the individual self, but the ego, in some sense, remains present, albeit not as the dominant force. In Eastern traditions, this supreme state of consciousness is often described as a state of pure awareness, where the subject, the individual, merges with the object, the universe, leaving no distinction between the two. This experience is thought to lead to a realization of the unity of all things, where the personal ego dissolves into the greater whole. In this state, there is no self separate from the universe, no Noah, as Jung might put it, because all distinctions between subject and object vanish. The individual becomes one with Purusha, the singular, infinite consciousness that binds all of existence together. This state is sometimes described as the ultimate liberation, where one perceives reality without any distortion or filter. However, Jung would argue that even in this profound experience, the ego, in some form, is not entirely absent. For him, the personal self may merge with the greater whole, but it does not cease to exist entirely. Instead, it becomes a part of something larger, a component of a unified whole, rather than an isolated, separate entity. In Hinduism, the ultimate goal of human life is the realization of moksha, or liberation from the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Samsara, moksha, is achieved through deep spiritual practice and self-realization, where one comes to understand the true nature of the self as not separate from the divine. The journey to moksha involves dissolving the ego through practices such as meditation, self-reflection, and self-discipline. These practices help individuals transcend the illusion of separateness and recognize the eternal, divine essence within themselves. It is through this awakening that a person can achieve liberation, escaping the cycle of suffering and rebirth. However, Jung's view complicates this idea, as he contends that even in the highest states of consciousness, the ego does not fully disappear. Instead, it is transformed, integrated, and aligned with a higher universal consciousness. For Jung, the ego's role is not to be entirely erased, but to be understood and incorporated into the greater unity of being. Jung believed that the most important task in a person's life is the process of individuation, a journey of becoming your truest, most integrated self. This process is not just about achieving personal success or social approval, but about deeply connecting with who you are at the core. Individuation is about recognizing, accepting, and integrating all the different parts of your psyche, the conscious and unconscious aspects, so that you can become a whole, distinct individual. Jung saw the unconscious not as something to be feared or ignored, but as an important source of wisdom. The unconscious is rich with hidden thoughts, feelings, and instincts, many of which are represented through archetypes, universal symbols that appear across cultures and time periods. By becoming aware of these hidden aspects through practices like self-reflection, dream analysis, and active imagination, we can bring unconscious material into our conscious awareness. In doing so, we achieve greater self-realization, growth, and understanding of who we really are. For Jung, individuation isn't something that happens overnight. It is an ongoing journey that lasts throughout life, a constant process of facing and integrating different parts of ourselves, including our strengths, weaknesses, fears, and desires. It's a journey of becoming whole, not perfect. Through this process, we move closer to understanding our true selves, and in doing so, we achieve a balance between the conscious mind and the unconscious. We stop running away from the darker parts of ourselves and learn to work with them. We stop living in a fragmented way, and we start living with a sense of completeness and harmony. The goal of individuation is not to eliminate the shadow, those parts of ourselves that we hide or deny, but to accept and understand it, allowing it to become a source of strength rather than a source of inner conflict. The more we embrace all parts of ourselves, the more integrated we become, leading to a fuller, richer life. Interestingly, while the aims of moksha, nirvana, and individuation might differ, there are profound similarities between these paths. All three processes involve a deep exploration of the self, a journey of self-realization, and the desire for spiritual growth. In Hinduism and Buddhism, the concepts of moksha and nirvana represent the liberation from suffering, from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, and from the false sense of self or ego. Similarly, in Jung's view, individuation is about transcending the limitations of the ego, but without erasing it completely. In both the Eastern traditions and Jungian psychology, the process requires us to confront parts of ourselves that we have buried or ignored. We must look into the unconscious, face our fears, our shadow, and even our desires that may seem unpleasant or uncomfortable. It is in this confrontation and integration of our deepest truths that we find true freedom, whether in the form of spiritual liberation or psychological wholeness. The journey toward self-realization in all three paths involves a deep, sometimes painful, but ultimately transformative process of self-exploration. Whether one is seeking moksha through meditation and mindfulness in Eastern traditions, or striving for individuation through psychotherapy and self-reflection in Jungian psychology, both paths require that we look inward, acknowledge our shadows, and embrace our fullest potential. Ultimately, they all point toward the same goal, a return to wholeness and balance. The cosmic man in Hinduism, which refers to a unified state of being where the individual self merges with the universal whole, is not so different from the self in Jungian psychology, which is a state of psychic wholeness where all parts of the psyche are harmonized. Both are about discovering and embodying our truest, most authentic selves beyond the superficial layers of ego, illusion, and separation. In both spiritual traditions and Jungian psychology, the journey is about becoming not a perfect version of ourselves, but the version of ourselves that is in full alignment with our true nature. It's about understanding that our shadows, our flaws, and our complexities are not things to be ashamed of, but essential pieces of the puzzle that make us who we are. When we accept these parts of ourselves, we unlock the potential for profound growth, creativity, and connection to something greater than ourselves. Whether we seek moksha, nirvana, or individuation, the goal is to live with a deep sense of inner peace, acceptance, and unity with the world around us. Across different cultures, the cosmic man represents a powerful mystical force. This celestial figure, often shown as a giant being going through a spiritual transformation, symbolizes our deep desire for personal change. The cosmic man's role goes beyond just the physical world. It represents the longing for harmony between our conscious self and our true inner being. It calls people to explore the depths of their own souls, letting go of the roles they play in society and accepting the hidden parts of themselves. As we explore the mysteries of the cosmic man, the lines between what we know and what we don't fade away, and the path to self-discovery becomes an exciting journey, helping us understand the unique place we each hold in the universe.